Hello everybody, welcome back to ArxangelRC. Today I want to show you a rather unusual model from Hubsan, which is obviously meant to succeed the famous H301S, judging by its GPS functionality, although you wouldn't be able to guess that purely by comparing the two by type and size, with the F-22 being considerably smaller. The reason why I can't physically put them side by side is that the H301S had an accident a while back and was scrapped, but anyway, the F-22 Raptor is here now, so let's dive into this. At first you don't really think about it all that much, but at some point you realize that this little thing is exactly that. Little. At 31cm wingspan, it is perhaps the smallest hobby-grade GPS-enabled model out there. Yes, this one has an autopilot with a GPS, supposedly a return-to-home function, telemetry, video downlink, etc. the works. The GPS is mounted under this hatch here at the back between the vertical stabilizers, and the autopilot is at the front, and I was pleasantly surprised to see how many heat sinks it has, and there is ample provision for those to get some adequate cooling. Obviously somebody had thought long and hard when designing this model. Just look where they tucked away the radio receiver antenna in one of the vertical stabs and masked it so it looks pretty. Unless you look real close, you will not see it is there. And all of that in around 100 grams of all-up weight, including the battery. Pretty impressive in my mind, especially if it works. When you open the box, everything is assembled and ready to go. You only need to plug in the landing gear and you should be good to go, and in a bit you will see why it is a good idea to have that installed. Don't forget to also charge the plane's battery, to charge the monitor's battery, to put batteries in the radio, and to read the user manual, because it will tell you how to calibrate the compass and also to do a level calibration, which is always good practice before a maiden flight. It is simple really. For the compass, power everything on, throttle stick down and to the left, move the other stick quickly left to right until the LEDs on the plane light up. At first only one strip will be on, rotate the plane flat like this until the other strip lights up and the first one goes off, then point the nose up and rotate along that axis like this. When both strips light up, the calibration is done. Of course, you should do this outdoors, away from any sources of electromagnetic interference, metal objects, cars, etc. Oh, and one last thing. Don't forget to put an SD card in the plane and in the monitor, assuming you also got that version of the plane, if you want to have any recording of the flight. Once all is powered on, press the camera button on the radio to start the recording on the plane, and pressing the record button on the monitor will take a photo. Press the mode button to change to video and then the record button. Once all of the preparations and battery charging are done, you are now ready to fly this little beast. Power on the monitor and the radio first, and then the plane. Plug in the battery, tuck the cables away and snap the hatch in place. I would advise you throw it on takeoff, because my experience with a rolling takeoff, seeing as how there is no other option for a takeoff, wasn't that good. It would throttle up, move the bit and then throttle down. I guess because the road surface was just too bumpy, so in my case throwing worked more or less. I have to say it is quite loud for its size. Just listen to this. Loud indeed. But anyway, to take off, press and hold the auto takeoff button for a second, the plane would start screaming, and then just throw it in the air. And if you're lucky, it will end up in a tree like this, with no damage to show for it. But there is something else going on here. Would you look at this? Even at zero throttle, the motor keeps spinning, and the only way to shut it down is to hold the return to home key, but the moment I let it go, it throttles up again. This is so weird, and in the manual it doesn't say anything about how to shut off the motor anywhere. It just keeps spinning. Absolutely ridiculous. I hope you now understand why the landing gear is pretty much mandatory. A surefire way to shut it off is to unplug the battery, but come on, there should be an easier way, and yet I couldn't find it. And keep in mind, this is a model that a lot of beginners would be interested in buying because of the GPS/FPV ready to fly thing it has going. Putting them in such a position is hardly a good idea. But anyway, since it refused to shut the motor off, why not fly it anyway? So I pressed the auto takeoff button again, it throttled up again, and my friend threw it in the air this time. It gained some altitude, and when I move the right stick, it goes out of that mode and you're in control now. First things I noticed were how quick this thing was and how twitchy and pitchy it was, sadly pitchy towards the ground. If it was going the other way, I wouldn't be complaining. It was definitely a handful to keep flying level, and I had to keep the elevator up a bit, which really messed up my other commands because this radio unit is quite uncomfortable to hold and to pinch if you're used to a full-size proper radio, which is how I am used to flying. The plane was pretty much all over the place and I was really surprised that I was even able to keep it from crashing. Yes, the autopilot was keeping the wings level and was definitely helping in that regard, but pushing that nose down really didn't help. After a while I decided to land it, but being so small and landing on such a surface, it expectedly ended up upside down. No damage and the battery went back on the charger. Before the next flights, I did do the level calibration. Place the plane on a level surface, hold the left stick down and to the right this time, and shake the right stick quickly left and right to start the calibration and just wait for it to beep. I even calibrated it with the nose pointing slightly up, and when it flew it was actually okay that way, seemed to fly pretty well for a few seconds, and then it was nose down towards the ground again, and a few seconds later it would be fine again, and that just kept happening throughout the flight. I don't know about you, but I get very dizzy from the onboard recording. It is horrible. I even tried flying by looking at the video, really not an easy task, and it is not helped much by the narrow angle of the camera lens. In addition, apparently the prop is a bit out of balance because there are quite a lot of vibrations visible in the video, and that could very well be affecting the autopilot and causing that up and down flight behavior. I have to be honest here, by flight 3 I was feeling a bit calmer and more confident and was getting used to this absurd flying behavior, so was able to play around with the plane a little, and it can definitely do some interesting stuff, but this felt more like a challenge than a pleasure. I felt like I'd gotten this one so I can challenge my skills, not to enjoy a pleasant and relaxing flight. And the first two flights really did feel like a chore or a punishment more than anything else. I was planning for a beginner to try this plane out. Sadly, when I saw how it flies, I think it would be more of a graduation type of model. I really will have to try and balance that prop, although balancing stuff this small that operates at such high RPM is quite difficult, but I will give it a try nonetheless and pray this also fixes the autopilot's weird behavior, although I find it weird it only affects the pitch axis. So, what can I say about this interesting little model? Definitely a weird choice on the part of Hubsan to go for something like this. Small and heavy for its size, definitely spelled out fast even before I flew it. So you might want to include a note somewhere in the product description that this is not a beginner plane, but rather for experts who just want to improve their skills by keeping a tiny quick plane from destroying itself. If you're also able to somehow fly using the video downlink, then you have reached master level. Now, I did try to engage the return to home function, but just like the H301S, I would assume it needs to be further away from the takeoff location for that to work, and it is really difficult to get it far enough purely by flying line of sight because this thing is tiny and moves quickly, which means that even at 100 meters it is about as big as a fly. What I am trying to say is that I was not able to engage return to home, have not seen it working as of yet, so I can't comment on it, although in the OSD I do see the number of satellites and the coordinates of the plane, so apparently the GPS is working. I guess after balancing the prop and assuming that fixes the weird behavior of the autopilot, I might be able to fly the plane via the video link, which means I could go further out, assuming the radio can reach that far out, which means I might have a chance to test return to home. But all of that will be in the next video, if the plane survives long enough for a next video. But until then, links for all items shown and used in this video can be found in the description below, and using any of them to buy literally anything from those websites would help support this channel, and you will have my unending gratitude as this is my full-time job. Another way you can support me is Patreon. The link is also there, and I would like to really thank all the people who have supported me so far in any way and would continue to do so. If you have enjoyed this video and found it useful, please feel free to like, share and subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to also hit that bell button so you can be notified when I upload a new video. Also consider following me on Facebook for more regular updates. Go hone your skills now. The Hubsan will see you in the next one.